this week's Knowledge Bite took a really interesting turn. You see, I had the question all prepared, the answers already, and I even had the right answer selected. But after posting and getting some really great feedback, I got one piece of feedback that kind of shook my mind up a little bit. You see, I have a friend, Rick Buzinski, solution architect at Blue Acorn, absolutely brilliant person, really, really good as a solution architect. He wrote a LinkedIn post responding to my question and answer there, and he basically said in the most gracious way that Rick does, like he's gracious personified, and even take that a step further is how he wrote this post. And he's basically saying in Joseph terms, you're wrong. There is probably a better option here. And it kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, I feel like I know Adobe Commerce pretty well, but you're right. You are right. So with that in mind, let's jump into this question here. And I'm going to show you what I was originally thinking and how this new but rarely used technology could just be a significant game changer for the projects that you are working on. So without further ado, let's jump in and see what this is all about. You have created an attribute to establish a consistent capacity across lines of products that vary significantly. If you remember, our last week's Knowledge Bite was about how to enable like a attribute filter on the sidebar layer navigation when we sell products that wildly vary. So we might have a mug that we sell, but we also might have a dumpster or trash can, and maybe this would be measured in milliliters, and then the trash cans from the manufacturer comes with a certain number of gallons or cubic feet or something like that, and these all have to be merged so the customer can filter. So the idea is we have to create a centralized list of these consistent capacity values. So this needs to be recalculated whenever the base value changes. Not going to change often, but it's going to be the same process all the way through. This needs to be done with maximum efficiency. Where do you hook into the save process to recalculate this capacity? All right, a couple of right answers here. Most everyone, I'll just say right now, chose A. That's what I was thinking as well. Create an indexer with mview.xml to asynchronously recalculate capacities. We have a couple options. We can either use an after plugin or C, we can also use an event. So all that to say, yeah, we're pretty much on the same page with that. Quickly, how does this work? Once a indexer is marked as save on schedule, as opposed to update on save, Magento goes through and creates some tables. So we can see the original mview.xml file here. There's some documentation as far as how to do this. The general idea is pretty simple. Just create our mview. It has a subscription. Then what ends up happening is when it's update on schedule, we have all these _CL tables for what I think is called changelog. And basically, when you save a product, there is a trigger in the attribute tables that actually then goes and injects this product ID or version ID into this specific these changelog tables, and then the indexer comes back through later and cleans those up. Generally speaking, that would be the way that I would have approached it. But look at it from this new perspective. You see, Adobe Commerce is a very changing product right now. There is well, I think we'll just summarize it by saying there's a lot of change around it. Adobe set a vision for where they see it going. Obviously, we all know that they are wanting to integrate it into their greater pipeline of products, Adobe Experience Cloud. And some people agree, some people disagree. That's fine. It's Adobe's product, right? They paid it $1.5 billion for that, so yeah, they can do whatever they want there. However, here is a key point to remember. Magento, as it is a monolith. It is a very there's a lot of code there, depending on how you want to count it, 4 to 8 million lines. And consistently, the problem that I hear in talking with a good number of merchants is the cost of ownership is very high. Magento and Adobe is doing everything they can to bring this down. And I think, unfortunately, there has been some pushback even in the community around this as far as why would you take it in this road? Well, the thing is, Adobe's really, their stakeholders primarily are merchants, right? Obviously, developers have to be on board, so it's not exclusively merchants, but merchants have a big say in this matter. And with promising competitors like Shopify and BigCommerce and all these other outfits out there, it's kind of no surprise that Adobe's listening to their merchants. It's the smart business thing to do. So here is what Adobe has been introducing, and it's in its infancy, but I think we're going to see it go some really interesting places. I'd like to introduce you to, if you've never heard of this before, it's something that I will admit is new to me, but I'm really excited about, is this idea of App Builder, Adobe I/O, and Adobe Mesh. Now, there's some videos online that talk about the differences, and this is not like an introduction video by any means, but one thing I want to show you here is this idea of how everything connects together. And I'm going to boil it down even one step further. We can look at this diagram. We can see that we have, our client side if we want to run a PWA. But what is most interesting, and I believe this is where we would see this placed with Adobe Commerce. Isn't that the Adobe Commerce logo right there? Yeah, I think it is. What happens in the Adobe Commerce is when this Adobe I/O module is enabled, you can actually send events like catalog, product, save after over into this Adobe I/O runtime, which is, think of the Adobe I/O runtime, the way I understand it, is basically the separate cloud, the separate hosting environment that can run React applications. And I don't know if it's like only React or like if there's requirements about like what type of runtime, but basically React applications are running there. Now, that kind of starts setting off alarm bells in our head because it's not PHP. No, it's not. And we're going to be talking more about this here as time goes on, but I see a lot of the industry kind of moving down to the JavaScript route, and it makes sense from a number of different angles. But ultimately, what's happening here with its Adobe I/O runtime is this event is sent over to it. This, again, what you saw in the screenshot here, this serverless action is running in the background. So maybe making these capacities consistent, and then it's pushing it back up either to Adobe Commerce, or if the catalog services are used, that can then be integrated over there. Now, this might all sound like voodoo, a little bit of magicry there, but at the end of the day, this is a very interesting and promising route. What this means is that your code that you write no longer has to be directly integrated or is dependent on the rest of the application working. It's kind of isolated over here into this one area. Now, all the architecture conversations, okay, do you do like these different services for different pieces, or is it one big service? That's all to be decided in the future. And I think we're going to start seeing some best practices start emerging. But the cool thing is, merchants on Adobe Commerce right now have access to this whole Adobe I/O platform, and it's there and it's available for use. I am really excited about this. Just to say right now, you might be seeing some training coming out from SwiftOtter about this here in the coming months and years. But this is building on this new idea of Adobe Commerce and how to best maintain it, how to reduce the total cost of ownership, and how to make this platform more stable for all merchants. It's a wonderful platform. It is really exciting to see the progress that is being made as if we look outside of the base monolith. Let's keep this conversation going. What thoughts do you have about these upcoming changes? I would be really curious to hear your thoughts about these changes here in the comments below.